Hey everybody, welcome back to another live stream here on Effective. My name is Justin. It's been a while since we've been able to get on and do a stream. Today I wanted to take a look at really solving a problem that I've been trying to figure out how to solve, and that's using Obsidian Canvas for a potentially useful productivity situation. We'll get into that in just a minute, but first I just wanted to say, wow, what a year 2022 has been. If it's anything like mine, if yours was anything like mine, I definitely know that I'm going to need to take some time to get myself on track for 2023. I started a new job. I'm getting settled into that. Life, it looks very different right now to what it did, goodness, even 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And I know that like some of my keystone habits, things that I used to do, things that I know that really were important to me, kind of fell off the radar. And so one of the things that I am going to do, and I'm really looking forward to doing it, is my annual review. I have a guide over on the website, thinkeffective.co. I'll pull up a link in the chat for you. But if you're interested in learning how I do an annual review, I have a guide that walks you through it, plus a video here on the YouTube channel. And it's all available for free. All you got to do is sign up. You'll get our email newsletter if you want to continue to get that. Otherwise, you definitely can just unsubscribe if you don't want something like that and still get access to all of the resources. So it's at thinkeffective.co/annual. If you're interested in checking out how I conduct an annual review. I think this is one of the keystone habits I have done that has produced outsized results for what the effort that I put into it. I literally spend like 4 hours during one day in the month of December just brainstorming a bunch of possibilities for the next year. My podcast process, which I'm not currently doing right now, but that came out of an annual review session. This YouTube channel actually came out of an annual review session, and I'm thrilled with how that has gone. And so I'm just really looking forward to what 2023 has in store. Again, if you're interested in figuring out maybe how to approach planning your 2023 a little bit more effectively, thinkeffective.co/annual to get the free guide there. Happy to help out, answer any questions on the podcast today too. But with today's topic, I really want to, as I mentioned, get into Obsidian Canvas a bit. I've had this problem that I've been trying to figure out probably for the better part of 18 months. And that's, how do I get a big picture view of all of the things that I'm thinking about that I probably need to touch within the next 6 months? How do I keep that in a place where I can see it, move it around, but then dig into the details? It's creating a sort of personal dashboard, but maybe not as structured. And so I want to experiment on stream today to see if I can get something like this working using Obsidian and Canvas. I think there is potential to do this. I know I'm still going to need some kind of checklisting application, whether that's reminders or OmniFocus or things or something like that, Todoist, for some of the things that I need to handle. But I'm wondering if I can get Obsidian Canvas to figure out a good chunk of it. So with that, I'm going to head on into the screen here, and we're going to just get rolling. Let's see, make sure I have Canvas. One thing I haven't done too much is play around with Canvas, and I know they've just recently done some updates to it, adding sections to it, and things of that sort. So I'm just going to make sure that Obsidian is up to date here before I dive in. All right, I'm going to create a new canvas. All right. And then I'm going to zoom Obsidian in a bit more so it's a little easier to see on stream. Okay. I'm just going to double click to add a note here. something with this is that I'm interested in kind of having a productivity orbit, so to say. If you think about the way I'm tending to think about it is like kind of what's in my orbit right now that I care about a lot, and things can move in and out of that orbit a little bit more, and then but still have them relevant or not relevant if they're not relevant anymore. So I'm gonna just think around with this a little bit. One thing I would love at some point is if they allowed like text changes inside of here. I'm sure it's coming, but that's something I'm interested in. Okay, so now the other thing here too is that some of these items on this productivity orbit chart are going to be, they might be work related, they might be effective related, they might be related to home, might be related to hobbies. And so I need to find a way to differentiate some of those. Well, let me take a step back, because I've been trying this idea out on a whiteboard and it seems to be working relatively well. But I love the flexibility that a digital tool like this can offer. I've tried something like this in Miro before and it's worked pretty well there too. But the thing with Miro is that you can't really get granularly deeper into something, because one of the things that I'm loving about this, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to create this one as an annual review. I'm going to put this a color of purple. Why not? And I'm just going to create a card like that. I'm going to make a little key card here. Personal. It's purple. Then we're going to do effective blue. And then hobbies green. Why not? I've been trying to spend a little bit more intentional time doing hobbies lately as well. So what I love about this is that I can highlight this text. I can go 2023 annual review. And if I pop over here to my reviews, I can literally just link in and create that note right now. So it's right built off of here, which I think is cool. I'm going to insert my template. I don't need this here now because Obsidian does a better job of that. So all in all, actually, that's not the 2023 annual review. It's the 2022 annual review because I'm reviewing 2022. So to give you a high level of what my annual review looks like while we're here, I go through a budget audit. I want to make sure and see like where's the money gone for both personal and business stuff. I do a wheel of life audit, which I take these areas of my life and I rate them 1 to 10 to kind of get a sense of where I'm at. Sometimes I do this mid-year if there's a big change, but I largely do this in the annual review process, and it just gives me a good baseline to understand what's working, what's not, what are some things that I might want to change for the next year. I do a brief retrospective to try to figure out and just keep a good log of like, hey, here are some cool things that I did this year. Celebrate some things. Hey, Jason, welcome to the live stream. Good to have you here. Go through this. I also set, let's see, what heading level did I have that at? 2. A yearly theme. If you're not familiar with that, I've talked about it a number of times on the channel, and going to report this message. All right. It's that time of year again. Getting spam on the chat. But anyway, I do a yearly theme. I am not a fan of setting goals, especially SMART goals, for the purposes of conducting my life over the year. I found themes to actually be really helpful because it gives me a reference point of what I want to achieve over the year. And if, as I've experienced many times, life fluxes, then I can kind of adjust what I'm doing without totally giving up on the goal. And then I spend some time just brainstorming what I might potentially want to do for the next year. And then I also try to take a look at the overarching system. This is not just productivity or PKM related. This is literally looking at computers and backups and where information is stored, what's working, what's not, and trying to figure out, does this continue to work for me or do I need to make some changes? So that is a big component of it. Anyway, back to the canvas. I have this here. I know this is something that is really important to me right now. So I want to make sure that I conduct that soon. The other thing that I'm working on, I'll look over to my whiteboard that I've been using. Christmas, obviously. I want to make sure that I get my Christmas stuff all sorted out. And yes, I know Christmas is just a couple days away. Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. But I want to make sure I get all that sorted out, make sure I have gifts wrapped, things of that sort before we do any sort of traveling. Let's see. I've been experimenting with this system stuff. The other thing, so I'm just putting like high level projects in here that I'm interested in. Let's see, this one's going to be green, but it's music related. Because I've been kind of experimenting with doing more music stuff on the side. And then health is another big one too. Jason is mentioning, oh, jeepers. Gotta block somebody. Sorry. Gotta figure this out here. Okay. Jason's mentioning Canvas is great, really solidly designed. It's so slick to use, feels so smooth. Just wish it had MarkMind style collapsible paths and the ability to shortcut create notes. MarkMind feels clunky, but you can entirely navigate and create with just the keyboard. That would be fantastic to be able to do that. Being a largely keyboard-driven application here too, you can do most of anything that you want inside of Obsidian with the keyboard. Programmer in me loves this JSON all the way down, so could write and automate scripts that generate the canvases. I haven't decided what to do with that though. Yeah, that is the cool thing about the way they've done this. I just saw on Hacker News that they announced this as an MIT open source format, which is great. And I honestly really hope that other applications adopt this format for storing data. Anything, even though Obsidian is a closed source application, it's based upon open principles, even though we don't have access to the source code. I understand the reasoning that the developers went with, having worked in the open source ecosystem in the past. I understand the reasoning that they went with for not open sourcing the app overall. Kind of the big thing is, I mean, it's just difficult to have a business model when you have an open source app that's targeted towards consumers. It makes it really difficult to sustain that. But I do get how things can, certain individuals that have a viewpoint on open source that's more of the, I guess, Richard Stallman viewpoint, where everything should be freeware type thing, and free as in liberty, not just free as in free from having to pay for it. I get that idea too. But I know there are trade-offs in the real world, and so you just gotta work with them. So anyway, MarkMind would be really neat, or having that collapsible paths would be great, especially for a mind mapping use case. I do think that Canvas could really take the place of a lot of mind mapping, the mind mapping plugins that there are, just because of that. I do think that so much of this stuff we're going to see in the near future. They've already started to add additional features to this, which I think is fantastic. It's just a matter of time to see what it all looks like, where it's all coming to, and all of that. All right, so what am I looking at here? I was going to add in something for effective. One thing I want to do is make sure that I'm thinking about this stuff, though I will be honest, it hasn't been as high on my radar lately because of the new job stuff. The other thing that would be great is if you could have different kinds of shapes that you could use versus just these rounded boxes. I think that would be really helpful. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm kind of doing some work on my office. I'm building sound panels to do some acoustic treatment in my office space here. I've got one built and I have enough materials to make 8 of them. I just haven't had time to really get out and do any more. But one, it's going to help, especially in this situation. Like right now, behind the camera is about 2 feet is a wall. I've moved my desk out from the wall a little bit. I can still hear, though, when I talk, kind of an echo. And I can hear it side to side as well. And so I'm looking at trying to deaden some of that. The other side of it is too, is I've been experimenting with doing more music production and mixing and things of that sort. I've kind of made this my content creation desk over here. And so this is not hyper important right now, but it's definitely something that I want to keep a little bit more in the orbit, so to say. These are really important, but they're things that I need to figure out what the heck I'm doing with them. Music is just something I'm kind of diving into when I can, which is great. This one's really important right now. This one's out here. This one's kind of also with health. It's like, it's something that's important to me, but it's not something that I know exactly what to do with it. I've been really floating in and out of different productivity style systems because when I build a productivity system, let me throw this out there. Maybe you can relate with this. When I build a productivity system, one of the things that tends to happen is that I build a system that has a lot of structure to it. But the way that I use these systems and the way that I do work is often very intuitive. And so having a map like this allows me to kind of more intuitively think about and pick the work that I am focusing on. But then it allows me to kind of get into the details of it too and flesh it out. So this could be really helpful. However, there is a level of structure that I still need too. And so if I don't have that structure, then it's going to be potentially a little challenging to navigate. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out as I mess with this. But overall, I'm kind of liking this. The one thing I also wish this had the ability to do, I mean, it kind of does. If I put like an emoji in here or something like that. So for example, I want to make this a priority. So I can just put an emoji there and just say, hey, this is your priority right now. So that works. But I wish like Mural, which is another one of these freeform apps that I've been using more recently, allows you the ability to pull icons in and put them on top of notes or cards that are on there. And so there is that aspect of things as well, that it would be great if there was a way to add metadata to a card without having to type in it or something of that sort. Brian is asking, does Canvas work with Android Obsidian? I actually don't know that as of yet. One, I'm not an Android user, so I haven't had any experience with it. And two, I just haven't been keeping up as closely as I'd like to on the development of the app to know exactly where that's at. We can look it up, though. Let me pull it up on screen here. All right, we'll take a look. 1.1, let's try 1.8, see. Oh, that's pretty cool. You can do YouTube embeds. I'm not sure if I'm going to use anything like that. I don't know if it works all that well on mobile yet, but it might. I haven't played with it, so. I mean, I feel like I'm not getting the latest version here, but that's all right. Let's take a look. I'm not sure on that. I guess, Brian, I would just recommend trying it out. Turn it on, see if it works, and if it doesn't, wait a little while. Jason, just getting caught up on the chat here, is Mark-minded plan, lesson structure for some courses I'm planning out. Love to switch to Canvas, but again, it's slow to make branching paths. Turning an outliner into a graph would be so useful. Yeah, that would be super helpful. Excalibrain lets you take the output and turn an Excalidraw image and annotate and work on it. That is a fantastic amount of integration to be able to do that. Yeah, but Brian, as Jason is mentioning, the story of the install, super easy. All you got to do is go to settings, and I did a video on this recently. Go to about, make sure that you are up to date. If you're on an insider's build, 1.1.8 is the latest as of today. If you're not an insider, 1.1 is the latest. Then literally go under core plugins. You'll find Canvas, and then make sure it's turned on. It's probably turned on for you. And then if you want to create a canvas, just hit Command P or Control P and create new canvas. That's literally all you have to do. I'm just going to try a couple things here. Let's see. Can I select multiple? Align, zoom to selection, set color, remove. Okay. Aligning is pretty great to be able to do that. That's kind of a table stakes feature as well. Okay. So overall, so the one thing I've been doing is denoting items that I need to prioritize this week with a star, and denoting items that if I have time to prioritize with a question mark, and then trying to keep that up to date. The trick here is I always find challenge with having some of these systems built into a tool. And so I almost wonder if, oh, you know what? Let's try this. Nice. Okay. You can do headings in here with Markdown. Good thinking, devs. That's pretty amazing. One of the things that I always struggle with is having these types of canvases or tools inside of a digital platform. One of the nice parts about having a whiteboard or something like that, a physical artifact with this stuff on it, is that it's just in my space. I don't have to think about it. I just glance over at it, maybe even in between, calls or on a call, or on a live stream like I am right now, literally turning and looking at my board. But it's just there. It's just there. But what this doesn't allow me to do is this, where I can link into something, flesh it out a little bit more. So for here, and two, like I can create another line item down here and say, think through 2023 health items. The downside is that it scrolls on the card. I don't really like that. It should, in my mind, auto resize. But I could create probably a bullet list there. Make that a bigger card. And then if I want to like kind of project plan that at some point, or just do some reflection on it, I can just click into that note and then actually have it linked there. The other side of this is I'm wondering, how does this and can this connect with a kind of a Kanban board? You're welcome, Brian, for taking you through the install. OneNote is pretty awesome. I've been using it a lot for work because I just have some limitations in that. But Obsidian is definitely great. I sometimes wish I could use Obsidian for my work, but unfortunately I can't do that. Jason's saying, I admit there's a tactile top of mind value to a sticky note agile board that's really powerful for active tasks, but discoverability and persistence trump sit for long-term work. I personally transcribe the current day's tasks, Todoist actions, and treat my day more actionably and get the benefit of physically moving tasks, but I work digitally. Yeah, so I guess to clarify, Jason, do you actually use like a physical board for that? Do you write stuff down but then do the work digitally? Or how does that work for you? I'd love to hear a little bit more, because I think I'm understanding it, but I just want to make sure that I understand it correctly before I say anything about it. Hey, welcome to the stream from Korea, KH. Glad to have you here. I had the opportunity to visit Korea. Oh gosh, it was 8 years ago now. It's one of the best trips I've ever taken. It was a beautiful time, beautiful country, amazing people. Highly recommend anybody visit Korea, for sure. Jason's saying, I used to use a whiteboard, but my atrocious handwriting made that difficult. Now I write tasks into Todoist, plan in Obsidian, then each morning make the sticky notes for today's work. Okay. 1 of 3 columns on the wall, move to do, doing, and done. Okay, so you take a Kanban approach on your day-to-day work, but then you kind of manage it and organize it elsewhere. I'd be interested to hear more too about how you write the tasks in Todoist and how you plan in Obsidian and how that works. That would be really interesting to me, because I have had, when I get too disjointed on my plans, and I get too disjointed on like between digital and analog with things, like if I get too far into analog, I'm missing so many of the features that I need in a digital space, or for a lot of things, like especially quick actions or being able to roll up a group of tasks into some kind of a project more easily versus having to copy them manually from like a bullet journal or something like that. So this is kind of partly what I'm trying to solve with this here, but okay. So all in all, looking at this board, I really think this can work. One of the things I'm interested in finding out, though, it has to do with Kanban. Okay, forum.obsidian. Apparently I want to just go to the announcements section. Canvas, Kanban. I'll dig in this a second. Jason's mentioning an issue with friction over focusing on process, so I purposefully avoid structure in Todoist. I treat it like an inbox or Dropbox, look through them and formulate them into buckets. GT inbox in a parasystem project. Let the active project have the physical component, but use Todoist because of how easy it is to drop things anywhere. Yeah, that's very true. It's very, very, very easy to do that in Todoist. Are you using how are you using Obsidian to plan? Be interested to hear more about that too in specific. Okay, Kanban plugin. The other thing I've been thinking about doing is using the Kanban plugin in some way to do something like this, but it's also a little too structured for me in that respect. Let's see what's here. Oh, Brian, I'll have to take a look at some of that stuff. Yeah, that sounds like a good, straightforward way to approach it, Jason. I also I don't necessarily struggle with seeing all of it, but I have to get it all out of my head. I've found that, like, for example, with the Canvas experiment here, I have to, I didn't feel like I could start engaging with my work until I got all of this stuff out of my head. And when I finally did, I was able to take a step back from it and say, oh, okay, I'm going to work on my annual review right now. And then I can start, one thing I did on my whiteboard is I would have these projects that I wanted to do, and I would just write a little word next to it, like something like this. Christmas. Finalize gifts. Packaging or packing. Wrapping. Things like that. And then that just allowed me to give extra context to myself to know, oh yeah, I have these other things that I want to do with that. And then I could just erase them or get rid of them as soon as I was done doing them. But because to me, okay, and this kind of comes back to something I've struggled with getting things done. I have used GTD off and on since, 2008 probably, when I first discovered it. I was listening to the Mac Power users, and I thought, oh, this is really cool. And I started using it and trying to experiment with it, and just developing that mindset and process. But one of the challenges that I found with GTD is being able to, I would always want to plan further out in a project than I could know what needs to get done, because I just wanted to, I know this needs to happen. I know this needs to happen. I know this needs to happen at some point. But it wasn't very good at helping me decide what's the thing that I need to do next for this thing. And this is also something that I've seen other people deal with. I remember, who was the guy that did the podcast on iPad productivity with, oh boy, I can see his face. I'm going to look it up. Oh boy. That's not it. Oh boy. But it was with the guy who does Mac Stories, Federico Vitici. And I can't remember the other guy. Fraser Spears. That's who it is. I remember him being on the Learn OmniFocus, like the screencast there that Tim Stringer does years ago, watching one, and he was talking about how basically GTD has gotten to the point for him where all he's doing is tracking next actions for a project. And I think that unless you're working in a really highly structured environment, that is relatively true across the board for GTD and for most people, is that once you get to a certain level of getting work done, unless you're making YouTube videos and you've got to just kind of funnel things through this process left and right continually, Kanban works really well for something like that. I do think though that GTD really does come down to largely managing next actions. And so this is kind of what this is built on in a lot of ways, because that's really all I care about too, is managing next actions. I just want to know, like, this thing is a thing that's important to me right now, and I don't want to forget or I want to keep top of mind that next thing that I need to do. But I also need to know, like, if I know down the road I'm going to need to do this thing, but it doesn't need to happen right now, I also need a place to put that too. But I need to differentiate the two. And so this is where I'm just trying to kind of explore these systems like this, because I need to know what's on my plate. I need to be able to see the big picture, and then I can dive in and say, I'm doing my annual review today. Let me get into that and start working on it. Or I'm working on my system today. I just need a space to start writing ideas out, thinking through this, trying to figure it out. Or I've got a bunch of music that I'm working on. I'm just going to start working on it. I'm not tracking tasks with that. It's just a hobby that I'm experimenting with right now. I'm playing around with because I enjoy it a lot. This is the beauty of having something as simple as this. It doesn't really need to get all that more complicated than this for me. I'm realizing. Literally, the whiteboard that I have over here allowed me to be more productive this week with the, I don't know, dozen items that I've written down on it that are high level kind of project type things that I'm tracking and trying to figure out. Allowed me to be more productive because I could see it all in one place with no details than I have been in months. Sometimes I think that as we become so ingrained in productivity culture and these tools, especially those of us like myself who have kind of a bent on capturing a bunch of stuff and wanting to make sure that we don't forget things. We want to grab all the input that we have. It is something that I think, I don't know. I don't think that productivity systems have been designed in a way to help people think through how to handle that kind of information load. I really think that there is a benefit to backing up big picture and then being able to selectively go deeper as needed. I'm gonna take a second to catch up on chat here real quick. We'll pop back over here because I know Jason has been posting a ton about how he's using and planning. So definitely check that out in the chat if you haven't been following along with that. Yeah, so it sounds like we're very much on a similar page in some regards here. Don't need to visit each one of these areas, but having them down means you can meander and enjoy the journey 100%. I work very intuitively, I have found, and obviously things get prioritized that I have to do. But when I try to force myself into too rigid of a way to track the work, then stuff tends to fall apart for me. I just don't want to use it. I mean, let me back up here a little bit. If you listen back to a lot of my early productivity podcasts, podcast.effectiveremotework.com is still the URL of that. Again, I haven't really published anything in like 18 months, but I'll pop a link in the chat if you want to check it out. You can get really of a sense of where I was at productivity-wise at that phase. I mean, that was the beginning of 2019 was when I started that podcast. And I was really heavily into OmniFocus. I started experimenting with the bullet journal. I was just coming out of a stint in the corporate world at that time, and OmniFocus really served me well. GTD served me well at that time, but I was at a very tactical level in the organization. And so moving stuff through the process, I think really helped me or just kind of was the way that I did work. But as I've progressed in my career, I've moved less, or I've done less of the tactical work, and I've done more strategic thinking, trying to prioritize, trying to pick the right work to work on, and kind of juggling multiple bigger level projects at one time. Things that I'm not necessarily going to close out in a week. And I found that having the big stuff mixed in with all the little stuff in a tool like OmniFocus just got to be frankly overwhelming. And the friction and the challenges that came with managing a system like that basically made me not want to use it. And it's to the point this summer too, where as Jason's mentioning in the chat, there's a video from ADHD Jesse about toxic productivity. I am on that wavelength. This summer, I went through a period, actually it started last summer. Let's be honest. It was summer 2021, where I have gone through these waves of what is the point of all of this stuff? What is the point of productivity? Literally. I mean, I wrote this essay too on my personal blog, trying to unpack my thoughts on it and where I saw productivity going, because I didn't want to leave this thing that I had been leaning on for quite a while. I know that I've just needed to transform it, to think about it differently. But so much of productivity seems to be all about throughput, even with thinkers and speakers like David Sparks and Mike Schmitz trying to think about, being more thoughtful and focused on things. Cal Newport and Deep Work, being more focused on things. There's still this underlying idea of it's all about getting more of the right work done. So initially it was get more work done. That was the sales pitch of productivity, was, hey, you've got all this work on your plate. Well, you can get through it and more effectively, more efficiently. Well, V2 of all this kind of took that and said, hey, we've got this new idea called deep work because everybody's so distracted by email and stuff that's going on around us. So instead of it being all about simply throughput, it just became about more throughput of the right things. So it didn't remove the fact that the level of throughput that we often pressure ourselves to get to is still pretty high. And I'm still of the belief that you can whittle it down well. And not to say that people in this space have been advocating for just continuing to do as much work as possible, but that's the mindset that often results from it. Because a lot of times, as Jason's mentioning in the chat, struggling with what he calls performativity in knowledge management, I often feel that way too, where I feel like I just have to perform. I have to be up to par. So when I've struggled over the last month and gotten sick a couple of different times, where it's just difficult to get things done at times, you kind of feel cruddy for that. Or when you're just worn out and it's difficult to get any extra stuff done. You've got to take care of yourself in those moments. But sometimes that nagging thought comes in and says, really? You're playing a game of chess on your phone for fun instead of getting the thing done in your house that's been hanging around for a while, and you have this thing that needs to happen? I mean, there's these thoughts that kind of come in and be like, really? Why are you doing that instead of being productive? But the truth is that we have to prioritize rest. We have to prioritize taking care of ourselves. We have to prioritize balance. That doesn't necessarily mean that we can't be productive, but I think that we need to start thinking about productivity in, I guess the best word that I can come up with it is in an inclusive way. I don't know how I feel about that word right now, just to be honest, because there's a lot of baggage that comes with that word, and meaning that comes with it. But the way that I am thinking about it in terms of that is largely people process information in different ways. People think about work in different ways. GTD, para, building a second brain, which I know para is part of that. All of these different productivity strategies and tools, it is what it is. The whole point, though, is that you have to find what works for you. And part of that is going on a journey of self-discovery, because unfortunately, no one's going to tell you that unless you're able to pay money with a knowledgeable coach or something like that to be able to figure out, like, hey, this is actually how you work if you're having struggle figuring that out for yourself. But not a lot of people are going to do that. And there's also around this whole idea of toxic productivity, there's also this idea that people like me, who would be considered a productivity or PKM guru on YouTube, are just kind of out to sell the next thing. And I mean, yeah, there's a business model that exists out there. But to be honest with you, I've really wrestled with that. I think one decision that I made this year, kind of hopping back to looking back at 2022, one decision that I made this year, and it may change in the future, but at least for now, is that I don't want what I'm doing here at Effective to be a full-time job. Because every other productivity creator out there is largely aiming to try to do this as some kind of a full-time job. Or they had a full-time job and they realized they could make a full-time income teaching productivity. And so then they jump into doing that. And to me, a lot of times what happens at those moments is at least over time, there becomes a disconnect between the people doing work in real companies and the people teaching the stuff. I think that's a problem, because the example that I keep going back to in my mind is probably, and this has probably changed a while back, but the example that I keep going back to in my mind is, probably 6 or 8 years ago, Asian Efficiency, which I know they're still around. I don't know how well regarded they are in the productivity space. They used to be pretty highly regarded, but they had this mentality that they were pushing of, hey, check email once per day, right? But for most people in the corporate world, that's not going to fly. If you're a creator, if you're a business owner, and your job does not depend on you collaborating with other people via email constantly throughout the day, then sure, makes sense. Check your email once a day. Try to move through it as fast as possible. But for most people who work normal jobs, who have to collaborate together, checking your email once a day doesn't work. Does it mean you need to have your email open all day long? No. Though I would contend that Microsoft made that really difficult by bundling the calendar right in with the email application. That's something that I've been finding myself struggling with too, is like, I live by my calendar. If any of you out there live by your calendar and use the Microsoft Office suite, you probably can feel my pain a little bit here. I live by my calendar. I need to know when those meetings are happening. I can't use Apple Calendar on my work computer. I need to be able to click a link to jump into a Zoom call. And the best way to do that is to get that calendar notification pop up from Outlook. But because Outlook has bundled in the email is just right there waiting for somebody to come take a look at it. So the point here is that having email open once a day doesn't work for the majority of people who actually need to collaborate via email. It works for a certain subset of people, but it doesn't work for everybody. Having your email open all day long, though, is not a healthy thing either, because you just end up reacting to things. It doesn't allow you to get in that state of focus that you do need to do highly leveraged creative work. The best explanation I found in the middle is something like manager tools. They have the do email 3 times a day, 30-minute blocks 3 times a day, 90 minutes of email, usually enough for everybody to get through as much email as possible. And it's all about processing your email, responding. It's kind of taking the GTD rules and applying it to email. Handle it in 2 minutes if you can. Send a response to every email that you can. Say, hey, I'm looking at this. I'll get back to you here very soon with the answer. And then just moving it on. So that's just one example, though, of a level of disconnect that can come. So many people on YouTube, too, I've seen just, talk about their process of making YouTube videos and how they be productive. I'm like, this doesn't really help me out. If I'm trying to learn something in the corporate world, I can't just have a single Things 3 project where I dump everything into it. That's too much stuff in one spot. How do you actually do stuff? And so I guess maybe what I'm trying to get at is that everybody's different. And sometimes we try to overgeneralize productivity. We get an idea in our head of, hey, this is what being productive looks like. And there are certain things that tend to resonate on the YouTube algorithm. And that doesn't help things out either. But it's more like what we need in some regards is just a way to crowdsource some of this, where we can genuinely and honestly talk about how are we using productivity? How are you solving specific problems? And so maybe, I'm just thinking about this right now, maybe an initiative that we try out here at Effective down the road is having some kind of a community. I used to have a community with Effective, but honestly, it just didn't really get the time and attention that it deserved from me. And maybe there's a point down the road here where having something like that makes sense, where we can work with each other, share information, share knowledge on what works, what doesn't, and not have it be this so GTD heavy thing or this para heavy thing or this methodology heavy thing, this tool heavy thing, but we can just talk about this stuff, what's working for you, what's not, and then go from there. And really genuinely try to be more effective together. That's really the mission statement behind what I want to do. I don't want to have a full-time income. I do want to sustain this. I mean, I do like to have an income from this. But I don't want it to be what I'm doing full-time, because I find that there's a ton of value in doing work elsewhere to where I can come back and ask questions and relate and share insights and knowledge from that here as well. And so just a little bit of a snippet of something that I've been thinking about lately and trying to sort out what that looks like. I know I've kind of questioned too if having any kind of a business model that talks about or that sells courses. I obviously I do have a course, Obsidian Made Simple, that I made with Francesco of Keep Productive. And that's been great. I really have enjoyed doing that. But one, app development is really hard to keep up with, especially in the pace of development of a tool like Obsidian. And two, you don't have to be so tool-centric either. My philosophy has always been find the tool that works for you. And if you want to learn more about it, here's something that I've made that can help you out. But do I want to create a course? I don't know. Do I want to share resources and ideas that I have? Absolutely. But I don't necessarily know if all of that needs to be behind a paywall. You get what I'm saying? All right, gonna check up on chat here. Jason's got a lot that he's added in there. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Jason. It's super helpful. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Jason, I've had comments on my video say, I want to be as productive as you, but that scared me. I don't want my life to be writing more summaries of the same productivity books. Yeah, that reminds me of the Bookworm podcast Mike Schmitz and Joe Bielig do. That one of the things that I remember Joe saying is that, and I haven't listened to that podcast for years, but saying that basically all of the books say the same thing. It's just said in different ways. And so there's a level of this where it's like, yeah, you're just getting the same information repackaged in different ways. And it's the same in some regards to business books. So there's tried and true methods, and there are just the way people tend to think about and do things. Pop over here. We can just read it together. Oh boy. There's a zinger right there, Jason. When your knowledge management system is more about knowledge management systems than knowledge, oh yeah, gives me existential dread. I very much kind of agree with that. That was something that I saw surface in the Mac Power users community recently. I don't participate in a lot of these forums, but I do read them periodically. And something that people have mentioned is a lot of these people who talk about PKM, they share their PKM system for PKM. So it's very tautological in that regard. But that they wanted to see more about, like, hey, how are these people like learning about different things? And that's something that I've tried to do in the past here. I've just run out of time to do it on a consistent basis with live streams. Is how do I learn things? What am I kind of thinking about? And just doing it live on stream, reading through articles, highlighting stuff, thinking about different ideas. Because there's so many different ideas that I value, so many different things that I enjoy, things that I want to learn about, things that I want to think about. But you're right. Like, if the majority of my time in my PKM system is thinking about PKM, I'm sorry. It's just like the same. It's the exact same trap that people got into with GTD. If you spend more time working on your system than actually getting the work done, you've got a problem. Jason's mentioning, perfect example. I recently wrote a PowerShell script that can take an Obsidian Canvas and use FFmpeg to spit it out in separate videos. You can use an OBS record webcam screen and all sound separately. The computer, mic, zoom audio, all different tracks. Actionable productivity I hope to see more of. Actionable stuff that made my ability to make video content effective. Even today I see Obsidian device that talks about the extra large canvas tricks, and then see everyone manually crop in Premiere, but not to think to automate those processes. Yeah. So this is interesting. Like, I have really gotten into the idea of automation. I haven't really done a lot of it. I got a Scrum certification. I'm a certified Scrum Master now. One of the things in the course that I took, getting ready for that, was the idea of using automation to take care of rote work. I think being effective like that is a really powerful thing. It kind of harkens back to the early days of productivity in some regards where, yeah, you really did want to remove some of the tedium from the day-to-day work so that you could focus on the bigger stuff. But it got turned into just using all that time to get more crazy work done and all of that. So anyway, hey, Rhonda, welcome to the stream. I actually just got an invite to Tana as well. I don't know how I feel about that. It seems like some of the hype around Tana has died down. And so that's, I think, a good thing. I'm going to be checking it out. I think one of my video that I'm going to do in January will be just kind of a Tana intro. And so, yeah, Rhonda, feel free to give that away on stream here if you want. Connect with somebody to do that. But I already have one. GTD, oh God. ADH draw. Yeah. Yep. I know. It's GTD is a thing. I'm not the biggest proponent of it. Used to be. I like some of the principles of it. Some of the GTD system can be really helpful if you have a large volume of work to move through, but overall, yeah, it can be a little tricky. Yeah. So looking at the system here overall, I do think that there's a lot of potential in this. I have some thinking that I need to do in terms of, am I going to use this inside of Obsidian? Am I going to try to hook this up into Kanban boards? Or am I going to try to just stick to having something like this on a whiteboard where it's in my space? I can look at it, and then trying to figure out managing some of the tactical items or backlog separately. I haven't quite sorted that one out yet. However, just taking a look at this on stream here, kind of playing with it, figuring out, oh, I could definitely do that. I think this could work. I really do think this could work for me if I want to have it in a digital solution. I do like the fact that this is not in a cloud service, because I like being able to work offline sometimes. And a lot of these cloud services do not have good offline support. It's just the unfortunate reality. The other thing that I've been doing more lately is I've been doing more handwriting in GoodNotes on my iPad. Sometimes I'll handwrite in OneNote for work-related stuff. It's been really nice. I got a paper-like screen protector, and I've put off getting one of those for years, but that actually really helped using the Apple Pencil, because without it, the pencil feels like it just slides all over the screen. But with it, I think it really helps to keep it, I don't know, it adds just a tiny bit of friction to writing so that it feels more natural. I really like it so far. But one of the things I've been wondering is how I might get information out of GoodNotes into Obsidian, because there's a lot of stuff there where it's like, okay, these are good ideas, good things. Like, do I just go back and have a review process where I copy it into Obsidian at some point? Do I just export a notebook on a regular basis out of GoodNotes as a PDF and store that in Obsidian? I just want to have all that accessible. That's really the big thing. Jason's mentioning, I can say those ideas were revolutionary for me. Same with really deep diving into Johnny Decimal. I truly believe 90% of people that claim to use it never read the website. But if these things are more than just ingredients to make your own workflow cake, it gets a bit too much like wearing branded apparel. Yeah. Rhonda's mentioning that Obsidian and LogSeq, SEQ, I still don't know how to pronounce that correctly, are attractive because of their local storage options. GoodNotes and NoteShelf for iPad. Yeah, local storage to me, I think, is a big deal. Too many times we've had cloud lock-in become an issue. Even lock-in with an Apple Notes. Apple Notes is a great, simple app, but it's really difficult to cleanly get information out of it. I much prefer having information inside of a text file, markdown file, PDF, standard file format that's likely going to be readable in the future. Jason is asking a question in the chat. I'm curious, does anybody else ever get Obsidian anxiety? I sometimes feel like a fish driving a monster truck. Like, it has so much power, and I feel like a failure if I'm not using it for everything. Like someone finally gave me superpowers, and I can't find a way to use them other than making popcorn. That's an excellent metaphor. I would have to say that you're probably not the only person. I don't specifically struggle with that, but I can see how a person would, because you have a big canvas. I think this is the same trap that a lot of folks got into when OmniFocus was really big for task management. And I think the challenge of it is, there's more potential that you could be unlocking. You see that potential. You see what other people are doing. You see these great and crazy workflows you could be building inside of it. But you just haven't taken the time to do it. Or maybe it's not your work style, and all that. It's a trap. It's a trap. We'll go full on Admiral Akbar there, okay? No, it really is. It's I would just pull back and really try to figure out what problem are you solving for? And if you're solving your problems in Obsidian, don't worry about any of the other stuff. If you find a problem and you don't have a solution for it, see if Obsidian can solve it for you. And if it can't, don't worry about it. Like Rhonda's saying in the chat, give yourself permission to use a few applications for different processes. There's so much potential here, but use it in a way that makes sense for you, not just because you see the potential for it. It might take a little time to sort that out. But speaking to Jason, anybody else who's feeling this anxiety of like, oh, there's so much power here. Don't worry about that. And I know, Jason, like there is this feeling of if you have skills as a programmer that you should be able to do a million different things with it. But just remember, like life is a series of 80-20 choices where like you've got to pick the thing that's going to deliver the most results for you with the least amount of effort. Otherwise you're just spending your time, unless you're doing it because you get joy out of it. It's like, it's really a prioritization of this. It's either most results for least amount of effort in my mind, or most joy for whatever effort it takes, because you're just enjoying the process of doing it. And if it doesn't fit into one of those buckets, like you can choose to do it or not, but that tends to be a way that I like to prioritize what's on my plate, at least what I can choose to prioritize, and try to navigate through things that way. Well, I know it's coming to the end of the day here for me. I wanted to thank everybody for joining on the live stream. I am going to sign off and get ready to eat some dinner because it is that time. But thank you, Jason and Rhonda. Thanks for Brian popping into the chat. Everybody else who's been watching, thanks so much for joining in. This has been a productive conversation today and trying to figure out, does Obsidian Canvas work for me? And if you didn't catch the beginning of the live stream, I definitely would recommend, if you're looking at 2023, trying to plan goals, trying to get stuff sorted out for yourself, think about maybe doing an annual review. This is something that I have found to be incredibly helpful and beneficial for me. If you want to see what I do for that, I've got a link in the chat. thinkeffective.co/annual. Will take you to my annual review video. And if you want to get the template for it, you can sign up for free. You'll join our newsletter if you want to get that. You don't have to get that if you don't want to get access to all of the free stuff that we have over at thinkeffective.co. You get all the guides that we have there for free. One on remote work, one on effective weekly reviews, choosing a PKM app, all of it for free. So with that, thanks so much for joining. I was really glad to do one of these streams again today. If you haven't subscribed, do so, because we're going to be doing stuff more regularly next year. I know this year has kind of been all over the place as far as content production. I at least want to get one video out a month next year. Again, this is not my full-time thing. I want to try to do it the best that I can. But overall, I'm here to help bring the conversation to the table and try to hopefully think about productivity in a different way and in a helpful way, PKM included with all of that. Thanks so much for joining today. Catch you in the next stream or in the next video. But until then, stay effective. Take care, everybody.